Welcome to Efiwe, excellence without stress.
So good day everyone and welcome to another Efiwe JAMB biology tutorial. Excellence without stress. So today we'll be talking about nutrition. So what exactly is nutrition and why is it important for living organisms to undergo this process? So nutrition is a very, very important life process for all living organisms. You cannot survive without nutrition because the energy you use for activities and the substances in which your body used to grow, those are things that are gotten from the food we eat, which we term nutrition. So what exactly is this nutrition? So nutrition is a series of processes by which living organisms they obtain food substances and they use them to provide energy and materials for growth, for activities, and also for reproduction. So the energy we have, where do we get it from? Usually from food. And the growth we undergo, those materials that are used for growth, where do we get those materials from? It's from the food we eat. And the series of processes in which we obtain that food is what we term as what? As nutrition. So what exactly is the food? So food is a complex energy-rich organic matter in which living organisms feed on to obtain nutrients and substances that are necessary for life. So when we say food, what exactly is that food? So it's a complex energy-rich matter that living organisms we have to feed on to obtain energy and materials that they need for activities and for growth. So green plants are the ex most important food producers. We will see that as we continue to grow on what that means. So we have different modes of nutrition. So first of all, we'll talk about autotrophic nutrition. From the word auto means self. When they say auto drive or something like that, it means self. So trophic means feeding. So let's see, autotrophic nutrition is a process where an organism prepares its own food from a simple inorganic material like water, mineral salt, and carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight. So the term autotrophic is formed from two words, which are what? Auto, which means self, and trophic, which means nutrition. So from the word, we know that what autotrophic is when the organism provides its own food using inorganic materials like water, mineral salts, CO2 in the presence of sunlight. So it literally means self-nutrition. Take note of that. So the trophic organism contains a green colored pigment called chlorophyll that helps in trapping energy from the sun. So the organisms that undergo autotrophic nutrition, they mostly have a green pigment called chlorophyll that is contained in chloroplast. So that chlorophyll is what is responsible for the green coloration of plants. So it also helps the plant to trap sunlight energy and use that energy to provide its own food. So all green plants possess an autotrophic mode of nutrition. That means all green plants, they provide their food by themselves. So we also have what we call heterotrophic nutrition. So an heterotroph is an organism that is unable to synthesize its own food. So its own food, it cannot synthesize it. And therefore, it has to rely on other sources, specifically plant and animal matter. Heterotroph, they can't produce their own food. Autotroph means auto, you produce your own food. But heterotroph, they can't do that. So they will have to rely on other organisms that have already produced that food or already that has that energy in which they need. So all animals are non-photosynthetic plants, that means plants that do not undergo photosynthesis. And all animals, they are classified as heterotrophs. Why? Because they are unable to prepare their own food. So these organisms, what would they do? They will, resort to all that form of nutrition. So humans, like ourselves, and other vertebrates, they rely on converting organic, solid or liquid food into energy. So we don't prepare our own food. We depend on food that's already been produced and we convert it to energy. So on the right hand side, you see the picture of example of an heterotrophic nutrition, which an amoeba is undergoing, nutrition. We'll talk about that more. So types of heterotrophic nutrition, we have many types, actually three mainly. We have holozoic, we have saprophytic, and we have parasitic nutrition. We'll talk about them more as we go on. So what exactly is holozoic nutrition? So this involves the injection and internal processing of solid and liquid food in an organism. So there are usually steps in this holozoic nutrition. First of all, you have to ingest. Ingestion means taking in that food substance. That food will have to be digested inside the body. You absorb it, assimilate it, and the ones that you don't need, you take it out, which you call excretion. So examples of animals that exhibit holozoic nutrition includes all vertebrates. You know what vertebrates are? Animals with backbone. So humans like ourselves, we undergo holozoic mode of nutrition. Even some unicellular organisms such as amoeba also exhibit holozoic mode of nutrition. So you can see in the right hand side the picture we've seen before. So heterotrophic nutrition undergoes, there are processes. We have injection, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and ejection. So digestion is when you take out what you do not need. So what are the types of holozoic organisms? So we have herbivores. we have carnivores, we have omnivores. I'm very sure most of you would have come across, terms like this before. So what exactly are herbivores? So these are organisms that depend on what? Plants for their food. So they can't produce their food, they have to depend on plants. And the examples are, cows, buffalo, deer, elephants, they are all herbivores. So we also have carnivores. So these are animals that they feed on other animals for their food. So like lions, tigers, leopards, they are carnivores. While omnivores, they can either feed on plants or feed on animals. An example are man, pig. Right this right hand side, you see examples of carnivore, herbivore, and omnivores. So now we have saprophytic nutrition. So what exactly is saprophytic nutrition? So saprophytes, that's an animal that undergoes saprophytic nutrition. They feed on dead and decaying organisms for energy. That's what they do. They feed on dead and decaying organisms for energy. So they're an important part of our ecosystem because they help in the recycling of nutrients. They help to take back nutrients back into the ecosystem. So they are very important in that aspect. So what are the examples of saprophytes? So we have fungi, certain types of bacteria. So they are responsible for the stealing of bread and other similar foods. So when you leave bread, after some time, the bread has become stale. It's usually because of organisms like this. So we're going to talk about parasitic nutrition. So organisms that live in or on other organisms and they acquire their food at the expense of their host is called parasite. So a parasite will live inside or on. So we have ectoparasite that lives on and endoparasite that lives in the body of the organism. So what exactly is the main term for parasitic nutrition? So one organism will gain, one will suffer. So these organisms, they are obtaining food at the expense of the other organisms. So those organisms, they are called parasites. And the organisms that suffer, they're usually called hosts. So most parasites are harmful to the host cells. Sometimes they even kill the host. Very, very harmful. So both animals and plants may serve as hosts. So unlike commensalism is when both of them gain. But for parasitism, one will gain, which is a parasite, and the other one will lose, which is the host. So a few examples of parasite are louse on a human head. So that's an ectoparasite. So they suck your blood and you lose. So why coscutter plant and tapeworms? Tapeworm is an endoparasite that is found inside the body of organism. So we're going to talk about plant nutrition. So it's not just animals that undergo nutrition. So nutrition is undergone by both plants and animals. So now I'm going to delve into plant nutrition. So, and the main plant nutrition we have is photosynthesis. So, what is this photosynthesis? So, from the name, photo means light. Synthesis means to make when you synthesize something. So, what is photosynthesis? It's the process by which what green plants manufacture their food. So, take note, green plants manufacture their food. So, photosynthesis is important not only to plant themselves, but to animals. Why is it important to animals also? Because the animals we have to depend on those plants for their food. The animals cannot manufacture their own food. So, after plants that manufacture their food, animals cannot depend on them. So the main features of photosynthesis are as follows. It takes place in what? Chloroplast. Take note. Photosynthesis takes place in what? Chloroplast of plant cell in the presence of what? Sunlight. So the right hand side, you can see picture depicting photosynthesis. So the raw materials for the process of for this process, they are low energy containing inorganic compounds. So things like CO2, that's carbon dioxide, water, that's H2O. So the final process are usually high energy containing sugar. So they use simple inorganic molecules to produce an organic molecule with high energy. So that's the energy in which we use. So oxygen is given up as a waste product. So take note of that. Oxygen is usually given up as a waste product in photosynthesis. So the energy that's needed to drive this anabolic process means building up. Catabolic means breaking down. So since we are building up, it's an anabolic process. It comes from what? That energy comes from what? Sunlight energy. And what helps us to get that sunlight energy, or what helps the plants to get that sunlight energy is what? Chlorophyll. And that chlorophyll is found in what? Chloroplast. So it's a very simple and easy thing. So on the right hand side again is also a depiction of photosynthesis. So the gases, which are what? CO2 and oxygen, they move in between the cells, in between the surrounding air and the leaves through what? Stomata opening. So there's a stomata that opens and closes that allows the gases, oxygen and CO2 to go in or go out or vice versa. So water from the soil, because you also need H2O. Remember, we need the water. So water from the soil, where do we get it from? It enters through the root hairs by what? Osmosis. So osmosis is movement of water from higher concentration to lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So from the root hairs, it is conducted upward from the stem, through the stem to the leaves. And we've talked about this before. Xylem is what's responsible for the conduction of water from through the plant. So most of the sugar produced are changed into starch because starch is the storage form. So that's how they store the most of the sugars that are produced in the leaf cells. So they are stored in this insoluble form until nighttime. So we'll see the reason for this very soon. So what are the processes or mechanisms of photosynthesis? So there are two stages. We have a light stage or a dark stage. So a light reaction stage or a dark reaction stage. And we'll see them very soon. So what's the light reaction stage about? So this is called the light reaction stage because what it occurs in light. It's very simple. So it has four major steps. What first thing, take note, this is a very common jam question. The first thing that usually happens is what? The chlorophyll is energized. So the chlorophyll first of all will be energized. And what does that mean? Traps energy and absorb energy from the sun. So that what means for it to be energized. So after that, what's the next thing? There will be photolysis of water. So photolysis of water means breaking down water using light. Photolysis. Lysis means breaking down. Photo is light. So photolysis of water. So the energized chlorophyll supplies energy that is used to what? Split the molecules of water into what? Hydrogen, which is H plus, and hydrogen, which is what? OH minus. So if that hydrogen ion is reconverted back to water and oxygen is given off as a byproduct. So it's a common question that the oxygen given off as byproduct, where is it gotten from? It's gotten through the what? Through water. So through the photolysis of water. So oxygen given out photosynthesis occurs in the light stage. So take note, the oxygen that's given off occurs in the light stage. So the hydrogen, remember it was split into H plus and OH minus. So the OH minus was converted back into what? Water and oxygen. OH minus is hydrogen ion. So what about the hydrogen? That's H plus. So the H plus is transferred by NADP, which is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. So that what helps to transfer the hydrogen around. So the hydrogen atom released during the photolysis of water is picked up by a coenzyme, which is what NADP, and is transported around. So formation of ATP, from ADP, because ATP means adenosine triphosphate. That means that's three phosphates. It's containing what? ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and what? One more phosphate. So the extra energy not used in displacement of water molecules is released to ADP to form ATP. So ATP is the molecule, is the energy carrier, is the currency of energy in the body, which is used later in the dark reaction stage. So this is the equation for the light reaction stage. And on the right side, you will see a depiction of the light reaction stage. So next, we're going to talk about the dark. We're going to talk about the dark reaction. So what's dark reaction? It's also called what? Take notes. It's also called Calvin cycle. It's also called carbon fixing reaction. These are other names that you might see. So be aware of that. So it's a light independent state. That means it doesn't depend on light because it's the dark. In which you what? Those sugar molecules that were formed before, they will be converted, in which sugar molecules are formed from what? The CO2 and water molecule. So the dark reaction occurs in what? Take note. Dark reaction occurs in what? Stroma. Take note of that. It occurs in what? The stroma of the plasma, where they utilize the product of light reaction. So that means the products that were already produced in the light reaction will be utilized later in the dark reaction. So the plants will capture the CO2 from the atmosphere through the stomata, said that before, and proceed to the Calvin cycle. So don't be confused. Calvin cycle also means the dark reaction. So in the Calvin cycle, the ATP and NADPH, that NADP has accepted the hydrogen, now it's NADPH, that is formed during the light reaction, drive and convert 6 molecules of carbon dioxide into one sugar molecule, which is what? Which is glucose. So what's the structure of leaf? That leaf, that's where the photosynthesis, is a photosynthetic organ. What's the structure? The structure of the leaf is adapted to its function. One, it contains a leaf stalk and a leaf blade. So the leaf stalk is what holds the lamina or the leaf blade in position. It holds it in a very good position to absorb maximum sunlight. So the lamina is usually a thin plant structure with a large surface area so that it can absorb more sunlight. Most sunlight it can absorb. So the midrib and the vein consist of what? Conductive tissues. So xylem and phloem. So xylem conducts what? Water and mineral salts, while phloem conduct, food substances. So what's the importance of this photosynthesis to life? We're talking about photosynthesis. What's the importance? So photosynthesis is very important in food cycles. As why? It's the only process that can trap the sun's enormous energy. It's the only process that can trap sun, because the sun is releasing a very enormous energy. And one of the processes that can trap that energy is photosynthesis, and it uses it to produce what? Energy, to produce food that animals and even the plant itself depend on. So animals and other heterotrophs, they cannot make use of the sun's energy and simple photosynthesis to manufacture energy-rich food. That's why they have to depend on plants. So therefore, all heterotrophs are either directly or indirectly dependent on green plant. What does that mean? Directly, when you eat the plants, let's say when you eat food, when you eat any plant food, That's directly. But if an animal eats that food and you eat that animal, so that's indirectly. So take note of that. So what are mineral requirements by plants? So plants they can make glucose. We just seen them make glucose. So they can make glucose and other carbohydrates. Hope we took note of that. The equation of reaction. Please take note of this equation of reaction. There's CO2 plus H2O to give C6H12O6 plus O2. That's the equation for photosynthesis. Take note, it's very important. So you combine CO2 and water to give what? Sugars. Because that sugar there is glucose and oxygen. So take note of that. That's a very important something. You should take note of that. It comes out a lot. So we're here. So plants can make glucose and other carbohydrates from CO2 and water. So in addition, they still require some things called mineral salts so that they can form protein and they can have healthy growth. So mineral salts cannot be made by plants. They have to be obtained from what? From the soil. So we have 7 major, we call them essential elements that are required by plants, except carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, they are very, very essential, but we have some other elements that are very essential that are not carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And what are they? They are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, iron, and magnesium. So we call them the major or essential elements. So the other ones are either called minor elements or trace elements. So they are non-essential. So this is a table that you should spend time with because it talks about the elements, the function, the deficiency symptoms, and the sources. So take note of that. So this is a very, very important something that you have to spend your time on. So now we'll talk about more on animal nutrition. So animal nutrition involves what? The study of what? Food substances, balanced diet, digestive enzymes, that's animal nutrition. So living organisms, they exhibit either what? Either autotrophic, which we talk about, or heterotrophic modes of what? Nutrition. Think of that. So generally, green plant and certain microorganisms will exhibit what? Autotrophic, while other organisms like man, like ourselves, we exhibit what? Heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So all food taken in by an animal can be divided into 6 groups. Most of the food we take in 6 groups. And what are they? Carbohydrate, protein, fat and oil, mineral salt, vitamins, and water. These are things that teach us in lower classes. But take note, water is actually a class of food. Please, it's a very, very important class of food. People it might sound funny, but it's a very important class of food. So carbohydrate, protein, fat, and oil, they are known as a primary food substance because they are necessary. They are necessary for what? For the maintenance of life. So why mineral salt and vitamins, they are known as welfare food substance because they are essential, but they are not as important as carbohydrate, protein, fat and oil, and water. Take note of that. So now we'll talk about carbohydrates. So they are made up of what? From the name, carbohydrates. Made up of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, hydrates. So there are different types of carbohydrates. So we have sugar, we have starch, we have cellulose. So simple sugar. So the common simple sugar found in organisms are usually hexose. Hex means 6. So it's a 6-carbon sugar. So they are the most important energy storage molecule in an organism. They help in storing a large amount of energy. So their chemical formula is usually CHO. It's usually in the form CHO. For example, with glucose, like glucose now is what? C6H12O6. So it follows the pattern CHO. Same with fructose, and same with galactose. Now we'll talk about proteins. So proteins will contain nitrogen in addition to those what? Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So they will have nitrogen. So they are the main body building substance. So if you want to build your body, you need protein. That's why people that work their muscles out, they take protein shake because protein is needed to build those muscles, to build your bodies. So they are necessary for replacing what? New cells, replacing old cells with new ones. So they are also essential for the formation of enzymes, because enzymes, they are usually proteins. So meat, flesh, that's milk, egg, they are substances that are rich in protein. So now we'll talk about fat and oil. They're also known as what? Lipids. They contain a high proportion of carbon and nitrogen, but very little oxygen. So note of that. That's it's a differentiating factor. High proportion of what? Carbon and hydrogen, but very little oxygen. So fats, they are solid, while oil are liquid. We all know that fat is solid and oil, they are liquid at room temperature. So they usually provide the body with lots of energy. They have energy. So they are solvent for fat soluble vitamins. So fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, they can dissolve in fats. That's why they call them solvents for fat soluble vitamins and hormones. So they are important component of cell membrane. If you know the cell membrane, fat and oil are very, very important components. So now we'll talk about the mineral salts. So mineral salts, what they do, they regulate the metabolism of the body. So some of them, they are component of enzymes, they can be pigments, and they can be component of structural parts. So we obtain most of our mineral requirements from the diet. Most mineral requirements, we don't usually produce them. We obtain it from the diet, we eat it. So some minerals like calcium, phosphorus, sodium, they are needed in fairly large amounts, while others like iodine and iron, they are needed in small amounts. So things like calcium is needed a lot. It helps contraction of the body. It helps blood clotting. We need a lot of calcium in our body. Sodium too, impulse transmission, the way the nerves transmit their impulses, they use sodium. Iodine is actually needed, but not as much because our thyroid gland uses iodine. Iron too is also needed in the body. So this is another table that contains mineral, the function, deficiency symptom. That means if you don't have this mineral in your body, how will you know? What will happen? And what are the sources and their daily needs? So you should spend most time with this table so that you can get familiar with it. So there are two tables. Also spend time with this. So the alimentary canal and digestion of food. So what's an alimentary canal? It's adapted for what? Breaking up food into smaller pieces. It produces digestive secretion and absorb those digested food and water. So the alimentary canal, what does it do? We said that the food we eat, they are too big for the body to absorb. So the alimentary canal will help us break them down into smaller pieces, provide digestive secretion that will break it down into even smaller processes that our body can easily absorb and take in. So though alimentary canal of different animals, they have similar function, they show variation according to how complex the organism. You can't expect that human beings and let's say chicken, they have the same alimentary canal. It will be similar, they do the same function, but there will be slight variation. You get so, and also depends on the kind of food the animal feeds on. You can't expect that a carnivore and herbivore, the one that feeds on plants and the one that feeds on animal, to have the same alimentary canal. So there will be slight variation. So feeding and direction in mammals. So the solid food that most animals eat is usually large, like I said before, and must first be broken down into small molecules in the alimentary canal before it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So this is usually done mechanically and chemically. Take note, mechanically, like in the mouth, the teeth helps in mechanical digestion. Why chemical is when you mix it with enzymes, digestive enzymes like ptyalin, pepsin, those are chemical digestion. In mechanical digestion, the teeth breaks up chunks of food into small pieces that we can swallow them. So that piece we can swallow is usually called a bolus. So take note of that. So the food is also mechanically broken up with the action when the action of muscular walls of the alimentary canal it turns it around. So when the food is still even in the alimentary canal, like in the stomach, it still helps to mechanically break it down. So food, when broken into small pieces, has a large surface area, which is essential for effective chemical digestion. Because if you just put the solid food, the way the chemical is digesting it, like inside of the food, we not get chemicals to digest it. That's why you have to spread it, you have to open it, make it very small so that when the chemical comes, it touches every part of the food. So that's the importance of this. Now we know that chemical digestion is carried out by what? By enzymes. So what is dentition? So most animals they have well-developed teeth. Most animals. So that dentition is usually complex. So what's dentition? Is a number and the kinds of teeth that is present in an animal in a mammal and the arrangement in the lower and upper jaw. So how is it arranged in our upper jaw? How is it arranged in our lower jaw? So everything we call it dentition. It's related to the type of food an animal eats. So like I said before, animal that eat plant and animal that eats another animal, they will not have the same. So we have premolar. Look at the pictures: premolar, canine, incisors, and molars. So human beings, they are omnivorous. I said this before, and their dentition is suited for this mode of feeding. So at birth, a baby does not have any teeth because it feeds what? On milk. You don't need teeth to digest milk. So the first set, that's the milk teeth, we grow when the child is just few months old and is ready to feed on solid food, some semi-liquid food and solid food. So how many are there? There are usually 20 milk teeth. Take note of that. So the second teeth, we call them permanent teeth, which are what? 32. So those are things you should take note of. So there are different type of teeth. So we have incisors, which is tissue shape. You can see the picture. Tissue shape, they are used for biting off pieces of food. So using them biting. So we have canine. In humans, they are similar to incisors. So they are conic and they have sharp pointed teeth in carnivores. That is tearing meat. So take note of that. So premolar and molar, they have wide surface. They are just used for grinding food. That's what you use for, grind the food. So what's the dental formula? I think this dental formula usually always asked in JAMB. Very, very, it's very common. It was asked during my time. I remember that time too. So the data formula shows the number and types of teeth an animal have in what? One half of each jaw, because on the both half is the same. So one half of each jaw. So different mammals we have what? Different data formula depending on what? On the diet. So these are pictures that shows the dental formula. So take note, dental formula for human and most omnivores is what? 2123, 2123. So what does that mean? ICPM. That means incisors, canine, premolar, and molar. Yeah, two molars up, two molars down, one canine up, one canine down, two premolar up, like that, like that. So take note of that. So 16 on one side, 16 on the other side. So that's why there are two sets of adult teeth. So these are pictures that depict the dental formula. And you can see the dental formula for one, but you can see there are some species. For example, they don't have canine. So that canine is replaced with what they call diastema. So we'll see that. So for a carnivore, we have 3142, 3143. So you can see that it's not equal. 3142, I think this was the one I was asked during my time. 3142, 3143. So the carnivore, they usually have what we call carnasia teeth. So we'll see that. So what is that diastema? So it refers to that gap or space that's between teeth that's often seen in mammals. So the presence or absence of a diastema is related to the type of the diet an animal has. So for herbivores, many herbivores like rodents, they have a diastema between their what? Incisors and molar. So what is this gap for? It allows for the effective grounding of plant materials so that plant materials can easily be broken down. While carnivores, on the other hand, they may lack a diastema as their teeth are often packed together so that they can efficiently tear the flesh. So what are carnivore teeth? I mentioned something like this. So they are specialized teeth in carnivores. Take note, carnivore teeth is in carnivores. That's adapted for what? Shearing and tearing of flesh. So they're usually what? I remember this mnemonic: LUP, FLM, LOP, and just the opposite. So what does that LOP mean? The last upper premolar and the first lower molar. This is a common JAMB question also. So animals like cat and dog, they have well-developed carnassial teeth that work together, to help to tear meat efficiently. So this is the structure of a tooth. You can see the crown, which is above this thing. You can see the neck and the root is embedded inside the gum. You can also see the enamel dentin and some other things. So alimentary canal digestion of food in humans. So the alimentary canal is a long tube that stretches from the mouth to the anus. Just one long tube that stretches from the mouth directly to the anus. So most of this is coiled up, inside the abdominal cavity, inside your abdomen. It's coiled up and usually divided into several regions, which is what? The mouth, we know the mouth, esophagus, that's where it passes from esophagus to the stomach, and the intestine. The intestine we usually have the large intestine and the small intestine. So each region will play a role in either the digestion or the absorption of food. All of them have important roles they play. So food is ingested in the mouth, and in that mouth, the teeth will help to break it down into smaller pieces. So chemical digestion will also begin in the mouth. How? Saliva. It contains an enzyme what we call ptyalin or ptyalin that acts on cooked starch and converts it into what? Complex sugar. It helps in the partial hydrolysis of starch to maltose. So saliva is a watery, slightly alkaline substance that's secreted by salivary gland. We have some salivary gland around our mouth. We have some mandibular gland. We have parotid gland. We have sublingual gland. These are things that are not really important. Just know that we have glands that produce saliva. So the tongue will mix the food with saliva and roll it into what? A bolus. I've mentioned this before, so that you can easily swallow it. So the pharynx lays into two tubes. The pharynx always lays into two tubes. Esophagus at the back and trachea. That's where wind, air for breathing passes through. While the one at the back is the one food passes through. So the one in the front is trachea or the windpipe, which leads to the lung, like I said. So behind the trachea is the esophagus or the gullet. That's where food passes to the stomach. So food enters the stomach when the ring of muscles. There are some muscles that covers the entrance of the stomach so that not anything can just enter. But when food comes, it relaxes, it opens up so that the food can enter. So as the food enters into the stomach will contract and relaxes, contract. It helps to even break the food into smaller pieces. So small pieces of food are broken down even more. The gastric juice, anything gastric means stomach, is mixed into the food. So gastric juice contains two important enzymes. What and what? Pepsin and renin. So they also contain what? Dilute hydrochloric acid. So the hydrochloric acid helps in what? Killing microorganisms that may be in the food, and they also help the enzymes to work well. So they are produced by what? Special lining of cells of the walls of the stomach. So mucus is secreted by certain cells in the stomach. So mucus help to prevent those those enzymes from digesting the stomach. So pepsin is a protease. It digests proteins to what? Polypeptides. It breaks down protein into what? Polypeptides. And the intermediate products in what? Protein digestion. So pepsin works best when in an acidic medium. So the acid also helps to what? Keep bacteria in food. I said that before. So renin causes the coagulation of milk into what? Thick curd. Take note. It does this by acting on the soluble protein, which is carcinogen, and converts it into what? Insoluble casein. So this action is important in infants. Why? Because their main diet is milk. So the casein is then broken down by the pepsin. And the food is retained in the stomach for what? 3 to 4 hours. And when the food is leaving the stomach, it's now called chyme. So take note of that. So in the intestine, how does digestion take place? So in the intestine, the small intestine specifically, the first part is duodenum. So we have duodenum, we have jejunum, we have ileum. So the duodenum is the first part. So the middle and the last section are what? Jejunum and ileum. So several substances are secreted into the duodenum. For example, now the pancreas, which is very, very important for digestion, it secretes what? Pancreatic juice, which is a watery alkaline liquid that contains a lot of digestive enzymes. So the liver will also produce bile. So take note, liver produces the bile, but the bile is stored in the gallbladder. So these two things will pour into the duodenum. So bile is a greenish liquid, alkaline liquid that it does contain digestive enzyme. So when chyme enters the duodenum, certain hormones stimulate the pancreas and the gallbladder to send their juice into the duodenum. So pancreatic juice contains three important enzymes: amylopsin that breaks down starch to maltose, trypsin that breaks down what? Acids and glycerol. So lipase to break down fats to carboxylic acid and glycerol. So what does bile do? So bile reduces the surface area of surface on fat. They call them emulsification. It helps in what? Emulsification of fat. So take note of that. So during this passage through the duodenum, the chyme will now become what? Chyle. Take note. When it was initially it was chyme, now it was chyle. So in the ileum, the intestinal juice is produced by special cells of the small intestine. So this liquid contains a number of enzymes that work what in an alkaline medium and complete the process of digestion. So maltose is what? Converted to glucose, 2 molecules of glucose by what? Maltase. So lactose will be changed to what? Glucose and galactose by what? Lactase. So sucrose will be changed to glucose and fructose by sucrase. So the end product of carbohydrate digestion is what? Simple sugar, which is what? Glucose, fructose, and galactose. So in the case of proteins, erepsin in the small intestine changes all polypeptides to what? Amino acids, which are the end product of protein digestion. While lipase changes what? Fats to what? Carboxylic acid and glycerol. So this is the table that shows the site of digestion, secretion, where they are produced, the enzyme that is present there, and the digestion that is occurring there. So I will urge you guys to also take your time, to get familiar with this table. So absorption. So that food has been digested. Now we've broken the food down. We've digested it. Now it's time to absorb. So the wall of the small intestine, they have folds and furrows. Why are the folds there? They help to increase the surface area. So in addition, there are small finger-like projection, what we call villi. You can see the picture of the villi on the right-hand side. That helps to increase the surface area of the intestine even more. So the inner surface of the intestine, each of them, the villus is thin. And why is it thin? So that things can easily go in and go out by simple diffusion or active transport. So there's a rich supply of blood vessels and lymphatics that contains what? Blood and lymph that carries what? Absorb and, when you've digested, absorb it, the blood vessels we have to take it. So you can see it inside the villi. You can see blood vessels, you can see artery, you can see vein, you can see lymphatics that have to carry digested food substances around the body. So undigested food is what? It passes into the colon. That's meant to be colon. So yeah, water is absorbed, not just water. Mineral salts also absorbed in the colon. So that's in the large intestine. So this concentrates the waste product and makes them what? Semi-solid. In this state, it's now called feces. So that's what you can pass out in the toilet. So feces passes to the rectum. Rectum stores the feces for a while and out of the body through the anus. So movement of feces is facilitated by what? Dietary fiber or roughages that helps to provide something for the gut muscles to squeeze again. That's why people that have constipation, they usually give them dietary fiber and roughages. So these are food tests. Test for carbohydrate. How do you know that this food contains carbohydrate? How do you know this food contains protein? And how do you know this food will contain fat and oil? So please spend your time here because these are very common, very, very common exam questions. So test for carbohydrate, Benedict test, Buret's test, and Southern 3 test. So you have to know the principle, the observation. Take note of that. So what's the work of the liver? So the liver has a lot of function. You won't even believe it, a lot of function. So the liver is the largest organ in the body. Actually, it's the largest organ inside the body. The largest organ in your own body actually is your skin. It's a fun fact. It's not very, you don't need that. Sha. So let's continue. The liver is the largest organ in the body, and it receives blood carrying nutrients from the gut via what? Hepatic portal vein. We talked about this in circulatory system. It also regulates, it also receives what? Oxygenated blood from what? Hepatic artery. Once you see anything hepatic, it's liver. So the hepatic vein will now carry the blood away from the liver. You can see the diagram here. You can see the hepatic portal vein, which is just called portal vein. You can see the hepatic artery and the hepatic vein that is taking it into the inferior renal cava. So the liver regulates the amount of glucose and amino acid present in the blood. So the amount of glucose and amino acid, it helps to regulate it. It regulates how the body needs. So if the body needs a lot, gives it a lot. If it needs more, it gives it more. So the liver has a lot of functions. So that brings us to the end of today's business. So thank you. So we'll see you in the next.